So I thought I would share some with y'all. There's a lot of great channels besides my own about universalism out there, and there's a lot of great videos out there. Like, for instance, if you're trying to convert somebody to Christian universalism, I would probably recommend showing them the Love Unrelenting documentary. Great documentary about Christian universalism. But if you're a well-seasoned universalist, there is a film out there that I discovered a while back, a documentary. Like, if you're already a universalist, I recommend you watch this. That really blew my mind. So some of the older universalists out there, but even some of the younger ones, will recognize this fellow here, this channel here, Tentmaker777. Tentmaker is like the first Christian universalist YouTuber to my knowledge, and he had a very big impact. He converted a lot of people to Christian universalism, and then in turn, he converted the Total Victory of Christ to universalism. And the Total Victory of Christ went on to convert a lot of other people to Christian universalism. So this guy's had a very far-reaching impact, and it's a pretty good channel. Some of his videos about stuff that isn't universalism, like he has a few videos about war. I'm a pacifist, but I don't like some of his anti-war videos. Find them a little bit, I don't know, cringe. And then he had like a video called like the Shack Attack by White Males. That one was super cringe. But for the most part, he has really great videos, really good stuff. And I recommend you watch them. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago, I think 2018. So the channel's been dead since then. But I started watching some of his videos a while back, just because I kind of run out of videos to watch on some other channels. And I'm like, well, might as well give this guy a try. And started watching. There's some really good stuff he made, really good interviews and things, a lot of good videos he made. And one thing I discovered on his channel, so one day I was like, why don't I go see the oldest videos on the channel? So you know how YouTube is, like you can hit the latest button, you can hit the most popular, or you can hit the oldest. And I like to go see the oldest videos on the channel because it's like, don't you want to kind of see how it all began and like the primitive years of the channel? So I thought I would look at the oldest videos on the channel. So I went to the oldest button, and I, of course, see this. These are some really good talks I think Gary gave about universalism. There's a debate Gary had, and then I scroll down a little bit, and I find a bunch of images of this old man, and I'm like, who is this old man? And I'm like, well, I might as well give this a shot. So I click on the first one of this little series called Giving Glory. And at first, I'm like, what is this? Because it's just Gary Emerald, a younger Gary Emerald, with some pretty low camera quality, talking over some really cheesy music for like the first 5 minutes. I'm like, eh. But when it gets to this fellow right here, Lewis Abbott, it gets really good. Turns out that old man is a guy named Lewis Abbott, as I just said. And Lewis Abbott isn't just any old man. He's an exceptionally well-educated Christian universalist. He has like 30,000 books, and he spent like 50 years reading all his books over and over. And he's really, really smart, really, really intelligent about universalism and just Christianity more generally. There are people in history you wish you could have talked to. For me, this guy is totally on like the top 10. Like, there's people I could have like sat down and talked to. Lewis Abbott would be on the top 10 for me because like he is a genius, and I would have loved to talk with him and just learn what he had to say about stuff because like he is exceptionally like intelligent. And what I love about this film is that I heard so many arguments for universalism I'd never really heard before. So many things about the Bible I'd never really heard before. Like one thing that really has always stuck with me from this interview is that he talks about that the book of Revelation is actually not the end of the Bible story. A lot of people think, Revelation, and that's the end of the story. But Abbott points out that in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, the resurrection chapter, especially from verses 22 through 28, Paul goes much, much further into the future than John did in Revelation. And he talks about that. He talks about how eventually all ruling will be abolished and all these things, and how eventually God will be made all in all. And that goes much further into the future than the book of Revelation. And he also pointed out something else to me that really stuck with me. In 1 Corinthians, I believe it's verse 27, it talks about how the last enemy to be abolished will be death. And Abbott made this really amazing point that the lake of fire could not be forever because the lake of fire is called the second death. And he said you can have a dozen deaths, but, eventually all death has to be abolished, and that includes the lake of fire, the second death. So that's really amazing. And it's just a really great interview about universalism. those are just some of the things. He's also exceptionally well educated on Hebrew and Greek. For instance, like talking about ion, ionius, which are the words that just mean age, but most Bible translations say they mean forever. He probably knows more about those words than most people ever will. Exceptionally well educated on the Greek, and he talks a bit about why these could not mean forever, and he does a really good job of it. He just talks about a lot of things inside the Bible. He's very well educated on the Bible. For instance, like he pointed out that, for instance, like King James onlyism, like those people who believe that King James is divinely inspired. He pointed out inside this interview, he talked about so many different things, but he pointed out inside the interview that the King James could not be divinely inspired because inside the original King James, there was alternative readings, alternative ways to translate the text inside the original footnotes. And he's like, that's just like a great argument against King James onlyism. And there's so many different great things the man talks about. Like, it's really well made, really great. I just love this little film. The hard thing about it, though, apart from some of the low production quality, is that it's posted out of order. So that the first few videos are fine, but then for whatever reason, part 4 is posted later than some of these other parts. And then part 8, the very end, and I recommend you watch part 8 because the interview with Lewis Abbott is over, but Gary Emerald, ends it off like giving a little bit of a talk. And part 8 is posted like a year later for some reason, but it's a really great thing. For instance, like some of my favorite arguments for universalism, like God would be a sinner if he did not save everybody because he would miss the mark. That comes from this little thing at the end, and it's actually really, it's a very beautiful ending, I think. And then this film ends perfectly. The credits are just Bible quotations after Bible quotations of universalism. So parts in the Bible where you can find verses about universalism and just list verse after verse after verse after verse after verse. And that's how this film ends, and it's amazing. It's a great film. My favorite documentary about universalism ever. And if you are a seasoned universalist, like you're somebody who wants to grow in your universalist faith, I cannot recommend it enough. For me, it's the best thing I've ever found on YouTube about universalism. There's a lot of great stuff out there, don't get me wrong, but I love this interview. It's amazing. There's such rich resources. I would for real recommend watching it twice. I know that sounds crazy, but there's so much to absorb. I would recommend watching it twice. Of course, that's just my personal opinion. You might hate it. I don't know. But I personally really liked it, and I would recommend watching it. So, go to Tentmaker, his YouTube channel, and then just hit the oldest button, and you'll find it pretty quickly. So, y'all have a good day. God bless. And, like, subscribe, share. And Christ will conquer.